Hello and welcome to the Bennett Innovations podcast, where we talk about building with AI, building AI into tools, and software architecture. I'm Lindsay Macvean, and this is my co-host, producer, and sister, Emilie Macvean.
Yeah.
Today, I think I would like to talk about building a software team. It's a bit of a soft skill. It's not as hard as actually building the software, but I realized when I was talking to my friendly AI today that it's something that I have done several times over my career, and I think I'm getting a bit better. But I thought, as you are an occupational psychologist, you might be interested as well, Emily, and you could probably bring some of that into the conversation and ask me some questions. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the places and times where I have built out a dev uh, team, a development team, software development team, and bring us up to date. So it probably started when I was building websites 15 years ago. I started hiring people on I can't even remember the names of the websites, but it's the equivalent of like Fiverr, but it would be like part-time hiring sites for developers. And you'd get people Ukraine, Morocco, India, Pakistan, Eastern Europe, Canada, America, different places, some South America. I got a good Moroccan guy,
Yeah.
and he helped me a lot building a lot of the early sort of little bits and bobs, plugins, and software. And I'd often use the opportunity to learn the skills that they know. I would get involved with them and try and collaborate. And then, if we go from there, there was a period where I wasn't doing much of that. But then I was in America, and I helped to build out a little bit the software team that we had in the facial recognition company. So that was more of the way I found people was through networking and talking to people because I was in the Silicon Valley Western Seaboard region. So it seems like they're very good at networking in the tech community there. So I was able to find people that way.
Yeah.
And then fast forward again um, to when I was working for the contractor for the government in the UK, I uh, I was involved a bit with helping and building the team, but it wasn't end to end. So I wasn't necessarily responsible for hiring, but once they were in situ, I was helping to put together the what we would call a DevOps team, which is the testing side with the software administrators, so the database devs, with the actual devs building new features and debugging, and then also the solution architects and so on. And so a lot of what I did was communication. So one thing I did was start actually opening up phone calls because at the start when I joined the company, we were doing a lot of communication with the developers. We had a team in Ukraine at the time and a team in Eastern Europe, and we were doing a lot of text chat with them.
Yeah.
And so I started actually opening phone calls, and they would be hesitant and shy at first. And I remember one of my colleagues saying that was when he heard the developers' voices on my computer in the office, it was the first time that he'd actually heard them speaking. And because of that, I think it started to create a connection where people would call the development team, and it's sped up, it's speeded up a lot of issues that we were dealing with. I also at the time, I remember as an example, there was a bug that had been affecting end consumers. Now you can imagine, I can't reveal the exact government department, but you can imagine citizens getting advice from a helpline, and the documents that were being given to the agents on the helpline uh, were um, were out of date because the cache wasn't working. And so a new doc can be uploaded and that wouldn't be updated straight away. And so the agent would get the wrong information and give out the wrong information to the citizen. And um, I made it about a vulnerable group that might be calling the phone line. In that case, I was talking about single mothers that might be calling that phone line,
Yeah.
and I said to the developers, "This is the single mother problem. And
Yeah.
you need to fix this because there is the wrong information is going out and messing up single mothers' lives." And that took a problem that had been plaguing or sort of hanging around in the background for about 3 months, and we had it solved in a week. And that was just because I reframed, once I understood what the problem was, I reframed it and put the right title and business driver on the problem. And so that was part of what I was doing there. And then I was building a startup, and we had to hire people from scratch and build a team. And I also did that at a second startup that I was advising later. And what I did there was I would go once again, go back to those kind of part-time websites,
Yeah.
and um, I would put an ad up, and I'd keep it really simple. I like to think of it like getting people in the right ballpark, but
Yeah.
not necessarily right on the touch plate or on target. So I would think to myself, okay, there's if you put up a general ad, I need a developer,
Yeah.
you would get 1,000 people. But if you put up a specific ad which said, can you write a line of this type of code, which in that case was JavaScript, and commit it into this code base or raise a pull request on this pull code base. And it was a very simple ask, but you would get about 200 responses and maybe 6 to 10 people that would actually do the task and were worth interviewing.
Yeah.
And so that allowed me to filter it down quickly. And then I'd interview for qualities. I would interview for honesty, which is hard to test for, but I would try to interrogate what they had worked on and whether they could honestly describe what they were working on. Um, and if there was a failure in what they did, and could they admit to that failure or to an ignorance that they didn't know? I
Yeah.
mean, it's the classic question of like, what have you got wrong in
Yeah.
your career or something? And people,
What
struggle with
you've
that.
done, and then you've overcome it. What's gone
Yeah.
wrong and how have you overcome
Yeah,
it?
yeah, that's the classic one. But
Yeah.
I would try to get there with creep up on it rather than ask it straight out. So I'd sort of just ask some questions about what they were doing and to explain it to me, and then I'd pick up on something and be like, did that screw up with what I
Mhm.
know about how things go wrong? And so I was able to find two great Ukrainians, but I think it was shortly after that in that startup I was building that the Ukrainian war broke out, so that caused issues. But to this day, I find Ukrainians often, I don't know what it is they do in their education system, but they are often great developers and very collaborative.
I
Uh,
think they're great workers as well. I work with a few Ukrainian people, and they're motivated, and they don't really take much time off, and they just kind of get
they're
on with
hard
things.
workers. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
workers.
And but that's not just Ukraine. I mean, I've worked with a range of different nationalities, but if I had to have a bias, I would say that I'd be in favor of a Ukrainian developer.
Yeah,
Um, and then in the corporate world, I've been involved in interviewing a lot of developers, but I find that in the corporate world, the ballpark I talk about
yeah,
shrinks
yeah,
because they often expect someone to be up and running. Um, it's they expect them to sort of be able to intelligently discuss things quickly, not
yeah,
necessarily that you're productive quickly, because the corporate world has a different issues to do with bureaucracy about making people productive,
yeah,
but in terms of actually hiring people, but the way that they get those leads are often through headhunters or recruiters on LinkedIn is the probably the
yeah,
primary way. It's how I was connected with the corporate. Someone reached out to
yeah,
me on LinkedIn. um, so those are my main ways of sort of getting the team, and then fitting the individuals together into a team that actually works. Has two parts. There's the culture, which I try to create high trust culture, and then also there's the systems that support them. And so the culture, again, I like honesty. I like within the people that know what they're talking about, the technical people in that sort of
yeah,
agile team. If you can try and pull out the business stakeholder so that you connect with them separately,
yeah,
so that because the business stakeholder can screw everything up because they don't know what's going on technically, and they come into a meeting, and if a developer is saying, oh, we kind of messed that up, they can get all panicked.
yeah,
But they don't understand how big or small the problem is. But if you can get the technical team with honesty that they're connecting and they don't feel like anyone's trying to stab them in the back. And so often for me, it's like admitting my mistakes with them. Like, oh yeah, I screwed that up. That thing could be better. You're right. Um, and and sort of being open-hearted with them, so because everyone is doing the best they can, hopefully, and
yeah,
also being empathetically assertive. So saying, uh, not saying that's not good enough, saying, good job. You
Yeah,
worked hard on that. Next time, this is what I think we should do better.
yeah,
And sort of giving that sort of you being clear about what can improve, but not starting it with the criticism
yeah,
necessarily. Making sure that people know that I appreciate effort, like, thumbs up, heart, good job. So that tries to create that trust. And then the systems, you want a knowledge base, which is in a corporate world is often something like Confluence
yeah,
or you might be unlucky and you might have like a Microsoft intranet, which isn't great because the data gets well, even in Confluence, it gets all sort of lots of different duplicate documents and things like this. So it's
yeah,
good to have curation of that, but having a knowledge base these days with AI, you can actually plug the AI in and then it will tell you, it will search through and you can ask a question like, okay, this system here, how does it work? Is there a diagram? Having the task management system like Monday or Jira or Trello or GitHub projects or whatever, where you can put tasks, but you need to be clear about trying to manage the work in progress in there.
yeah,
Making work visible is a key thing. Having an information radiator is important. These are all core concepts. An
yeah,
information radiator allows everyone on the team to open something and see what's going on. So you might have an information radiator that is a dashboard for how the system is running, but you might also have an information radiator that is your task management screen that you share screen on a video call. Um, I've also tried hybrid calls where you've got a group of people in one room and then other people on video calls. I often find it's actually easier to just send everyone back to their desk and connect independently because
yeah,
then you've got the name on screen. You can do a recording if you want to. You can share screen and everyone's got the same. Everyone's got their headsets on. But sometimes everyone in a room on a video with some people on a video call has to be done. What else would I say there? Um, there's also the development pipeline and chat ops, which is really powerful. So development pipeline we talked about previously, but it's where when a developer is writing code, it goes into the version control system like GitHub, and
yeah,
but that act of the developer essentially clicking save and saving the code, it then triggers a series of steps using a tool like Jenkins or GitHub Actions, and it will
yeah,
do some tests, do a bunch of different things, and ultimately deploy it into production. Hopefully you have to click another button to actually deploy. It might deploy it initially to a secondary
yeah,
or a sandbox so that people like the business owner can actually look at it and be like, yeah, that looks good. That's what I'm looking for. And so that pipeline is important. But if anything goes wrong, or even if it goes right and there's a deploy happening, that notification should go to your chat channel. And so you've got your chat, and so Slack works well. I actually have a document called I think it's called Company Technology Bingo, which is like all of the different areas. Have you got your knowledge base? Have you got your chat? Have you got your video conferencing? Have you got your task management? Have you got your pipeline set up and your code version control? Um, so,
yeah,
so that's sort of an overview of the systems. There's two other things before I shut up I wanted to go over, which is one, um, development agencies.
yeah,
They can be a nightmare. And twice, or more than twice, several times, I have had to save a startup from development agencies that are not great. I think there are good development agencies out there.
yeah,
But a lot of what was on over the last 10 years was that you'd have someone who, connected with some, group of developers in India or Pakistan or somewhere. And they would then turn around and white label that to companies and startups in the UK, Ireland, Europe. And they'd say, yeah, yeah, we'll build your thing for you. And the end company doesn't realize that they're actually basically just paying a middleman for a group in India or Pakistan. And there was a few challenges with that, which was one the time zone difference. So often the way they play it is you would say, if it was me doing it, I'd go to a customer.
Yeah.
I've never done this, but if I was doing it, I'd go to a customer and say, um, uh, okay, give me your specification. Okay, I understand. I write it all down, and then I go and basically email that to my guys in India, and they do it overnight. And I come back, and by the morning, it's done. Now, India and Pakistan are about 4 to 5 hours ahead, so they'd probably do it early morning, and then you'd have it by lunchtime, like the next day.
Yeah.
And so that the reason that was poor was because often, but in the Chinese whispers between the end customer and the development team, you would lose the what's actually critical about the business driver and so on. And so the thing that got delivered often wasn't right, and then you'd have to rework and then rework and rework. Um, and there was lots of other issues with development agencies as well, particularly um, because they wouldn't because the Indians or the Pakistanis, and I'm picking on them, but you could have done it with any nationality, would often, because they're not native speakers, and they wouldn't feel comfortable necessarily being involved in a conversation with the client. They would be kept separated. But if you just connected with the
Yeah.
developers on a call, where you've got a developer on a call with the end client, it could have solved a lot of problems. But anyway, the startups that I helped often felt frustration because they were like, this stuff just isn't, I don't know what's wrong, but it's just not right. There's things going wrong. And perhaps the development agency needed a solution architect or a software architect to look at the whole system and say, need to change these parts around. Anyway, I'm going to stop waffling in 1 second. So the last thing I wanted to talk about is um, how AI is changing this. So the world is changing, and I don't know for sure how it's going to land, but I can tell you what I've seen in the last year or so. What I've seen is that end clients, end customers, businesses even, can create a lot of what they need quickly using some of these tools off the shelf, like
Yeah.
Replit or Lovable. The challenge that they are having is they don't know. Lovable was tricking them almost as bad as those old development agencies. Lovable, you'll try and build something, or uh, Replit, you'll try and build something, and it will just create a thing, but it's not actually. It tricks you. It tells you it's working, but it's not really. It's on their own servers. It's not set up for like a large customer base. As they're trying to change and chop and change things, it starts getting confused. But the point is that raw development, if targeted well, can be done largely by AI. So what's left for the humans? Well, I think there's still a space for architects that actually say, okay, this is how you should lay it out. You should have a server here, you should have a connection with a third party here, like Twilio or whatever, and you should have a client, a client front end, and you should probably use this language over that language. So some of those key decisions early on that you can feed to the AI, but also you need a competent operator, um, and so someone that's actually that's writing the code and or writing the instruction to the AI, and it will actually tell you the person doing it, the operator, will know if something's going wrong. I think I'm going to shut up there because I know that we try to keep these to half an hour. To talk to me, what have you heard from all of that?
It's interesting to think about because when we learned about it, and I know that I remember talking to you when I was doing one of my essays at university, and I said, "Oh, how do you hire people?" Because I had to write an essay about it, and you said, "Well, first of all, you want basically what you ran through that." And I found that so interesting because we were looking at it, I suppose, from the first step, which was you're looking at the job description, you're looking at what personality traits you want, you're looking at what skills you need, like what personality trait, yeah, and the skills that you need. But I was just thinking about when you're looking for a developer, you're not so much looking for, I suppose, personality traits necessarily because you're in a big group. I mean, it does matter, but it's not always. I don't know whether you agree with that, but it's not always front facing. So you would need somebody who's going to get along with the team. But I think when I've spoken to a lot of developers, I've noticed that they don't always have those types of skills with sociable skills.
The communication skills.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
But that's kind of essential. Is what we were kind of deciding about was those communication skills are essential because if you're not communicating and if you're not sharing information, then you're all kind of at a disadvantage. If
So
you're not sharing it and doing it all together,
there's
that
a particular thing that happens when you're doing coding. And I don't know, it kind of happens when you're doing AI coding as well. But
yeah,
historically, when you were doing coding, you kind of get a form of kind of autism where you kind of lose the ability to communicate well. Because you're
yeah,
busy, like, focused so much on symbols and structures in your mind and how things are linking together that you slowly start to, and so someone comes up to you and says, how's the project going? Where are you? And you go, because you've just got so much in your brain and so much going on, and you like can't use your mouth to communicate what's actually going on. And so management of developers in that sense, good effective management of developers is about being able to sort of get a sense of what's going on for them and be like, hey, show me what's going on. What are you looking at right now? What's stopping you? What's blocking you?
yeah,
And then being able to say, that you're going down a rabbit hole there. That's the wrong direction. We're wasting time there. I know that you're putting in a lot of work, but if we just fix it over here, then that doesn't matter.
yeah,
And so pulling them out of rabbit holes, and being the voice of a developer is the job of, say, a good Scrum Master, really.
yeah,
And I've worked with great Scrum Masters at times, and that's been what they did well. And they were
yeah,
able to then turn around to the other stakeholders, business owners or product owners, and be like, okay, this is what's going on. I've
yeah,
got Bob over here. He's really working hard, but he's stuck on this regex problem. We're going to redirect. We're going to try a different thing. We've had a chat. We're going to still deliver on time. We think that, or we might have to take an extra few days or whatever. And
yeah.
so that's effective management. But so that means that the developer themselves, whilst they need to be collaborative in the sense of listening to what needs to happen and thinking it through and thinking, actually pushing back at times and saying, actually that looks, we're not doing it right, that you're going to struggle if we try and do that thing, if we try and build this connection, because I and so they have to, you have to listen to them and they have to listen to you, but they don't have to be necessarily like great orators or
Because
um
we did the personality trait assessment, so you can test people's personality traits, and we did this at university. And I remember as part of it, we got to do our own personality traits, and I got back mine, and it was all green, which meant you were high in all basically all the areas.
wow.
It was but low in one area that you want to be low in. It was low, and I was like, oh, amazing! I was like, so I'm basically perfect. I was like, I'm brilliant. I said it to the teacher. The teacher went, well, if you're looking for a job in HR, we'd actually rather you were low in this area. We'd rather you
Oh,
weren't necessarily an extrovert. We'd rather your empathy levels weren't too high.
okay.
And they were at this point. So there was all these different areas that basically meant that even if you certain jobs need different to other ones, even if you think you're
Let me
yeah.
ask you something. In psychology, is the general consensus that once you take one of those personality tests, that's you and it never changes?
No, it's
Okay.
well, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. I think, and this is why I was actually wrote in my notes just there, was when you give people the test to do, they're meant to be in the same environment. Nothing should change in the environment. If there's an interruption, that's gone. If you don't do it in the same way for each person, then it changes the results. But if you give it to them, say, a week later, or a month later, or after something happens, or after they've had a bad day or a good day, the
Yeah.
results are going to change, I think. I don't think they'll ever be
Well,
the same.
I've definitely seen that because I've taken multiple personality tests over the
Yeah.
years, and it seems to me that my personality, if you take like one of those, like whatever it's 64 personalities or whatever, I can't remember how many number there is,
Yeah.
but it would be like ENJP or whatever.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that my personality will shift to the role that I'm currently occupying and the activities I'm trying to complete.
Yeah.
And so I was like tagged as a campaigner in my personality test when I was in a business where I needed to elevate issues to the senior management and explain issues to them. So I was constantly in that mode of trying to convince them that we need to go this way or that way, versus when I was in a strong leadership role where I'm building a team, and I can't remember what I was called then, but I was like, some other personality type according to the test.
I think it changes and it fluctuates. I think there is a general, and I hate saying this because I don't really agree with personality tests. I don't think they show anything. I think you can choose to answer it in what way you want to answer it. And I
Yeah.
think you can, if you choose to be honest, you can choose to be honest, but I don't think we're always necessarily
If
viewing ourselves in the
if you were to
correct way.
like give it to a team, you don't necessarily know that you're going to get honest. Yeah.
Exactly. And but even when you fill it out, you don't know if you're actually being honest. You could see yourself in such a way, but it
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean you are that person.
What
You could
about a 360 type assessment where you get everyone around you to do an assessment of you and you assess everyone around you? Have you ever
I
done?
I think that's brilliant. I think that's a perfect way to do it.
I
Because
mean,
I think
yeah,
I
I found it quite invasive when I was doing one, and kind of stressful,
yeah.
because you have to like give ratings and things to like everyone around you, and you're
How,
like, what, like,
how
yeah.
often how when would you do that? How far into the
It
relationship
was it was a
person?
one-time thing that I did in one business, which was given to us, and I don't know if it was ethical in the approach that they chose to do
Yeah.
it. Because I'm pretty sure that people like it was a relatively small business, and the people that were in HR, I didn't feel like anything I said would be kept confidential necessarily. I mean, as it turned out, it was fine, but it felt a bit stressful. It felt a little bit like we were living in a panopticon, and they were putting undue pressure on us to some
And
degree.
how give the results to you as well? Did they say, well, yeah, people rated you 4 and people said that you were 3? Or did they how was it given back to you?
I forget. It was quite a high pressure environment. I can't
It's
remember how they gave it back. Yeah.
it is a dangerous thing to do because if you're getting people to do that, it depends how often, and as we learned before, as you perceive people can often be more harmful to the person,
Yeah.
that you can see them in a certain way that's often more harmful. But I wrote down a ton of questions. So
Well, we've got a challenge because this session on Zoom is going to end. So, do you want to like restart in a second, and then we can stitch the two videos together? Do you want to do that?
yeah,
Just
yeah.
restart session. Okay, let me end the recording. Hang on.